As I'm sure you know, few things excite me more than a trip to a Mexican market. But today, I'm at Mercado Lazaro Cardenas, not for the fresh produce or a favorite fonda. No, in this market, the highlight for me is coffee. Okay, I'm an admitted coffee geek, and here at Passmar, I get to taste some of the country's best coffee made in a whole variety of methods. Well, one of the most interesting ways they brew coffee, at least to me, is this siphon method. Now, using a halogen lamp heater, water is boiled in the lower chamber, turning it into steam and shooting it up into the upper chamber. The ground coffee's poured in and then everything's mixed together. And as that lower chamber cools, it creates a vacuum that pulls the brewed coffee back down through the filter. It's part show, part process. And in a very similar way, Mexico City is gaining a reputation for pushing the boundaries of another kind of drink, cocktails. A lot of the bars of Mexico City are really taking the idea of handcrafted cocktails and running with it. Here at Limantour, they've created a cocktail somehow based on tacos al pastor. It was something I had to try. Ricardo begins making his tacos al pastor cocktail with a kind of sweet base. It starts with regular sugar, lime juice, fresh cilantro, fresh basil, spearmint, and a little chopped serrano chili for some heat.
Like you would put in a salsa that goes on the taco.
Exactly.
He muddles all that together pretty gently.
Pineapple juice, because if you have tried the tacos al pastor,
Over the big spit of pork, there's that pineapple cooking.
So we're gonna use fresh pineapple juice, 50 mils. Triple sec, we're gonna use 25 mils. And we're gonna use mezcal.
Oh, so that'll sort of taste like the smokiness of the charred pork.
Exactly. We're gonna use 30 mils.
Next, he stirs all those ingredients together, dissolving the sugar. Then he adds ice and gives it a good shake. The drink is given a double strain to remove any of the stray leaves from the fresh herbs as it's poured into a chilled cocktail glass. Finally, it's garnished with a part of the crown of the pineapple and sprinkled with just a little bit of cilantro salt.
So this is Margarita pastor for you, Rick. Enjoy it.
Thank you so much. Okay,
Salute.
let me see here. It does have the smokiness, the little touch of pineapple, but it also tastes like a margarita. I mean, it's got all of the tanginess that we associate with a margarita. I think it's beautifully balanced. I think it's really a delicious, delicious drink.
When you start working on your own special recipe for a margarita, you really need to understand that a margarita fits into a big class of cocktails. They're all called sour drinks, and they have a very set proportion of ingredients. You need 1.5 ounces of your base spirit. In this case, for a margarita, it's going to be tequila. 1 ounce of something sweet, which is typically an orange liqueur, or an orange liqueur mixed with some simple syrup, and 1 ounce of something sour, in this case, of course, fresh squeezed lime juice. Now, you have to decide whether you want to go for a margarita that's really smooth. If you do, then you'll look for a reposado or an añejo tequila and a brandy-based orange liqueur. Or if you like your margaritas to be really bright, think about a silver or a blanco tequila and a clear orange liqueur. I'm going to go really smooth for this margarita. So into the shaker, I'm going to measure 1.5 ounces of this añejo tequila. Then 1 ounce of a brandy-based orange liqueur, and squeeze 1 ounce of fresh lime juice. In that goes. And now I'm going to prepare the glass. Typical to rim a margarita glass with salt And that's not an affectation. The flavor of tequila goes so beautifully with a little bit of salt. It's just like a match made in heaven. So I have some kosher salt here. I'm going to just moisten the rim of my margarita glass with a little bit of lime, and then dip that into the coarse salt. Some people like to do half of the rim, giving the guests the opportunity to choose whether they want additional salt on there. I'm going to fill this shaker with about 3/4 of a cup of ice. Put the top on very securely, and then start shaking. And typically, any kind of citrus-based cocktail will be shaken with ice. And then you do this for 3 reasons. One is to chill it. The second is to dilute it. You want to get the exactly perfect ratio of alcohol to sweet to tanginess, and all diluted exactly to the perfect ratio. And the third is to chip away a little bit of ice into it so it looks frothy and really beautifully refreshing. Pour it out into our prepared glass, and you've got a classic margarita. The only thing that I like better than gardening is gardening for cocktails. Yes, you can actually grow some stuff in your backyard garden that you could weave into a margarita. I call it a garden margarita. And what are those things? They're usually herbs. Of course, there's the classic Mexican herb, cilantro. You muddle that into the shaker before you add your margarita ingredients, and man, it just explodes with this beautiful, fresh flavor. An unexpected herb really would be basil, but it's got that glorious sweetness that we all love. Have you ever seen the small dwarf basil? Such a beautiful little plant to grow. Probably my favorite in a margarita is lemon verbena, because it's so fresh and lemony, and it just marries perfectly with the flavors of a margarita. And of course, the old standby mint. You don't have to have a huge garden. You can grow all of these herbs in pots. That's what we've got them in pots right here. And once you put them in pots, you want to find a place that's really sunny for them. Most of these plants really like full sun. Mint, it can get away with a shadier spot. They all like heat, so you want to think about harvesting in the middle of the summer. And they all like to be kept really moist. Don't ever let your pots dry out. A couple of times a year, an organic granular fertilizer should be added to these pots. Basil likes a little bit more fertility than that, so you'll want to amend the soil a little bit more frequently. I'm going to harvest some of these herbs now, go back into the kitchen, and show you what I mean by a garden margarita. When you're going to focus on the bright side of a margarita, well, you might want to actually work in some of these fresh herbs from the garden. I think it's a delicious combination. We're starting with the Polanco tequila, a clear orange liqueur, but the first thing, if we're going to work the fresh herbs into it, is to muddle them in a cocktail shaker. So I've got mint and cilantro. You'd be surprised at how delicious cilantro is in a margarita. A sprig of mint goes in there. Nice sprig of cilantro. This is the typical muddling implement, but if you don't have that, you could just use the back of a spoon to crush those herbs, releasing their beautiful aroma. Then I'm going to build the cocktail the way that I did before, pouring in first 1.5 ounces of Polanco tequila, our ounce of orange liqueur, and we'll need 1 ounce of fresh squeezed lime juice. Now, whether you're making the smooth version of this or the really bright version, you might want to squeeze in a bit of simple syrup, or as I'm going to do here, just a little bit
of agave syrup. Now, to prepare the glass for this special garden margarita, I'm going to make a special salt for it. I've got some dried herbs. When there's an abundance of herbs in the garden, I'll oftentimes bundle them up and just let them hang in the kitchen until they're completely dried. I've got the lemon verbena, some cilantro, mint, and some basil here. So I could use any of those to make this special salt rimmer. But I'm going to use the cilantro today. Just kind of cut off some of those herbs and then scoop those into a spice grinder, or you could do that in a small food processor as well. Add your coarse salt, about equal portions. Put the top on and just pulse it until you see that the herbs have mixed into the salt in a sort of uniform way. Beautiful. Put it out here on the plate. Spread it out a little bit. Around the glass rim, I will moisten with a little bit of lime juice. And then drop it in here. Look how beautiful that is. Now, you could serve the cocktail up like I did the first one, or you might be the kind of person that likes to serve your margaritas on the rocks, keeping them super cold for a longer period of time. And then ice cubes into our shaker. Put the top on securely and then shake it. Again, about 15 seconds of shaking is what it will take for the proper ratio to be achieved. That is just so beautiful. The herbs have filled the kitchen with their glorious aroma, and the whole thing looks so refreshing. Perfect for a summer day.
Joseph Mortera is one of the most creative minds on the Mexico City cocktail scene. He's kind of a cocktail consultant, helping bars and restaurants to bring their cocktail programs to the next level.
So you poured mezcal here. It seems like every good hip bar I go into in Mexico City, it's all about mezcal. What's wrong with the tequila? Why aren't you guys giving any love to the tequila? There's some amazing tequilas out there.
I'm sure they are. And actually,
You say that like you haven't tasted one in years or anything like that.
No, actually, I did a couple of minutes ago. Well, the thing with tequila in Mexico, it's really huge. But I do believe that here in Mexico City we drink mezcal because I don't know, the people believes and really thinks that the mezcal is more pure somehow than the big brands of tequila.
I see. Because it's more artisan?
Because it's more handcraft, and they love to taste the unusualness.
But there's some beautiful tequilas that are handcrafted
Indeed. And I'm sure they are. I just think that the trend in this area in Mexico City is going with the mezcal.
The flavors of mezcal are very distinctive. And in some cases, perhaps not as friendly for mixing as tequila is.
I get it.
And where does your mind go? I know that I tend to think about complex things to match with it, but what are you thinking about?
Well, basically, depends totally on a brand. Depends totally on the agave. Mexico, we have.
There is a huge variety of flavors.
Yeah, we have like thousands of agave that you can make a mezcal with. And depending on the altitude where you are growing, your mezcal gives you different flavors. What I basically do is like go to the markets, find out what is on season, try to match the season that we're having with plants or fruits, and find maybe a mezcal or a tequila that has the same kind of flavors and try to match them.
Well, I'm very interested to see what you do with that exactly. So I want you to show me a couple of drinks.
Of course. I would love to
Okay,
do that.
Let's go.
I know you're a huge fan of the Hoja Santa.
I am. I love that flavor.
So it's a short glass,
Okay.
and I'm gonna use half of a beautiful Hoja Santa.
Wow.
I'm gonna use half of it to model it. With this side, I'm gonna roll it,
Okay.
cut it in half, and put it into my shaker.
Okay.
With the other part, I'm gonna use it as a garnish because
Oh, really?
I believe it's a beautiful leaf which needs to be and more used.
Oh, beautiful.
And then I'm gonna use one of the limas from Yucatan, and I'm gonna use the juice of these 2 limes, freshly squeezed. You can feel the aroma already.
Oh, you can.
So that's it of lime juice.
Okay.
And we need a little bit of
Agave
sweet,
syrup.
so I'm gonna use agave syrup, which you might find it almost everywhere
Oh,
right
yeah.
now.
It's very, very widely available. And then you're muddling the leaf in there.
Exactly. So now that we have it, I'm gonna put only a little bit, like 10 milliliters of absinthe.
Oh.
This is gonna give you herbal flavors.
So
on it.
that's what I was talking about when I said I find sometimes mezcal has to pair with something else that's kind of strong
Yeah.
because it can have its own strong flavors.
Exactly, they have the same kind of flavors. And we're gonna finish it with 2 ounces of mezcal. This time I'm using a reposado. And it's all set. Let's put some ice on it. Shake it real good. And we're almost there. I think I'm gonna double strain it.
To catch all of the hoja santa leaf.
Yes. We're almost there, Rick. 1 big ice.
Okay.
And the touch, I'm gonna use celery seeds.
Is that right?
Only like a pinch right in the top. And really hope you enjoy it. So if you bite like one of these celery seeds, you're gonna get like the celery flavor in the back.
I have to say this is my drink. This
It-
is
it
my
was- it
drink.
was-
I
it was
love
for you at
this
the
because I
first
love all those anisey kind of flavors. I love the strength of the mezcal, the complexity of the mezcal. I love what the absinthe adds to it. That is a brilliant drink.
Thank you so much,
That is
Rick.
really brilliant.
I hope you enjoy it.
I'm not going to share it.
Don't.
Down in the Yucatan Peninsula, they make this really delicious dip spread that they call sikil pak. It'll remind you, I think, of hummus, but instead of chickpeas, it's made with pumpkin seeds. So that's the first step in making it into the food processor. I'm going to measure 1 cup and 3/4 of these pumpkin seeds. Next, for some tanginess, we'll add 1/3 cup of fresh lime juice and 1/3 cup of fresh orange juice. Add 1/3 can of diced fire-roasted tomatoes. And for a little bit of spice, some habanero hot sauce goes in. Add a couple of tablespoons of tahini, or you could substitute sesame seeds if you're making this in a blender. Roast some sliced onion on foil in a dry skillet. Once it's cooled off, give it a rough chop and add it to the food processor. Process it all until it's a smooth puree. Finally, chop some cilantro and add that to the processor, along with a scant teaspoon of salt. Just a couple of pulses to blend in the cilantro and the salt. I like to serve this with slabs of jicama or cucumber. Maybe you want to put out some chips to dip into it too. I have an idea for another delicious little mouthful. It's going to be some spicy toast topped with a little slab of pork belly and salsa negra. And it starts with chipotles, just the way that the one does in the state of Veracruz. But I'm going to go the easy route on this and use the canned chipotles. And I'm going to open 2 full cans, because we're going to make a lot of this, and put them into the food processor. Now, salsa negra, as its name implies, is all about dark flavors. So we're going to start here with some dark brown sugar. You could chop up piloncillo, the dark, unrefined sugar that's used so much in Mexico, and use that in this if you would like to. I need 1/4 cup of balsamic vinegar. And the reason that I'm putting that in is because it's also very dark. 2 tablespoons of molasses. And then blend everything until it's completely smooth. Next, I have to cook that mixture in a saucepan over about medium heat until it's completely thick, like as thick as tomato paste. Scrape it in, and then stir it really regularly as it simmers. Now it's cooked down until it's really thick. I'm going to add the last ingredient. This is the ringer. This is 1/4 cup of soy sauce. Now it's not going to come off tasting like soy sauce because there's a lot of other really robust flavors. The soy sauce is going to add a whole lot of depth of flavor. I'm going to let that cool down while I prepare the toasts. You want a rich bread for this. I'm using brioche, but you could use a challah if that's more accessible to you. I'm slicing 5 fairly thin slices off of this, trimming off all of the crusts and then cutting each one into 4 pieces. That'll make them perfectly bite-sized. Next, lay them out onto a baking sheet in a single layer and brush the top of each one with the cooled salsa negra. Slide them into a 400-degree oven and let them bake until crisp. That'll take about 10 minutes. I say it's a beautiful day because I can now buy pre-cooked pork belly, so I don't have to do all that long, slow braising, and I can use it in simple little things like this little appetizer that I'm making right now. And I'm going to slice it into 10 even pieces, and then each piece into 2. Over kind of medium-high heat, I'm going to brown these pieces of pork belly, brushing them, glazing them with the salsa negra. Top the little toasts with a piece of that seared glazed pork belly. And then, we can get these beautiful little microgreens at my local grocery store now. So I thought that'd be the perfect thing to put on top.